like Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, after the lockdown, I think the focus now really is on the economy. Can we revive the economy? Can something be done? Because don't forget, the economy was already in a bad way before COVID struck us. So India really has a tougher challenge at hand. Some people, we have even the finance minister saying the economy is contracting. Of course, the question is how much is it contracting really? But at the end of the day, people are looking at minus GDP figures. Where are we headed? The figure, the last quarter in Jan to March was already 3.1. And remember, that was before COVID hit us. To try and figure out what we can do, how do we revive the economy, what are the sectors that can help us. I have with me a panel of experts. I have Dr. Didar Singh. He's an ex-secretary government of India, and he's also been the ex-secretary general at FICCI and an author. I have Dheeraj Nair. He is the chief economist at Vedanta. M.K. Venu, he is the founding editor of the Wire.in. Pranjal Sharma, he's an economic editor. He's also a noted economist himself, I would say, and he's an author of India Automated and Kranti Nation, right? So, Dr. Singh, I'll begin with you. How bad is the situation? Don't sugarcoat it for us. I know you won't.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I'm going to quote from actually the global situation before we talk about the India situation. You know, it's being openly said now that this recession is only an advance for the real recession which is still to come. I mean, that's really shocking in the sense that this recession will be handled. It is being handled by a lot of governments who have pumped in money, but the real recession is waiting in the background. It's like talking about elephants stuck in mud. You can move, but you're actually stuck in the mud. And this is the situation which the global economy is facing. Please try and not sugarcoat the India situation. The global situation is really quite bad. So you will see V-shaped recovery in some sectors like retail and maybe agriculture and stuff like that. But soon this V-shape will be recession hitting recession. And then you'll really go downhill, not just India. And I agree with Venu that possibly we could go to a minus double figure, a two-digit situation prevailing in the country. But let me be slightly optimistic in this situation. What are the good aspects of this whole situation? Okay. And I'll just end with that. There are certain green shoots which are possible. One of them is really innovation and skills. We should concentrate on that. The second thing I need to say is that this is the time for regional integration. We should get together in whether it's South Asia or ASEAN or whatever. This is the time to do it, to rework our geopolitical situation and get into, you know, I read an article saying FTA for Quad. I mean, that's really stretching it, but this is the way we have to think. We have to think regional now. And finally, I will say one last thing, which we all must now remember and put in, which is the earth. We must remember that climate change is a major issue, and recession in climate change means that, I mean, there would be no job because there would be no earth left. So it's a very serious matter that we need to really look at. Thank you.
In fact, you know, being optimistic on a show on the economy is something, and I think we are, in fact, being optimistic in doing a show on the economy, because as I was just thinking early in the morning, I should have maybe done a show on Sushant Singh Rajput. So I'm being optimistic and hoping there are more people concerned than just us and they will listen to us. But Dheeraj, take off from there, you know, what are your first thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, so I mean, there is no doubt that the economy is in a tight situation. And as you rightly pointed out in your introduction, there were certain trends in the economy which were worrying before COVID came along, particularly the long stagnation in investment, private investment, which has actually been now on for 8 or 9 years. And I think that is one of the main drivers of the economy. It was the main driver of the economy when, you know, our growth was at 9 or 10% in the 2003 to 2008 period. So that was already a challenge. Exports have also been a challenge for the last 5 or 6 years. So two main drivers were challenged. Now, of course, we've got a situation, the finance minister calls it an act of God. I mean, this pandemic, it's something which is not supposed to happen or supposed to happen, you know, once in 100 years, but it's happened. And there's a public health shock and there's a demand shock because of it. You know, the demand, supply, everything is shocked because of it. And let's be honest, things are not likely to get back to normal until the public health situation is solved, which doesn't seem to be, a solution doesn't seem to be around the corner. There are mitigation measures, but vaccine and so on may take another 8 or 9 months. So situation is tight. What I'm concerned about is that the government has so far in India, and there's a difference between India and the globe, which Dr. Didar Singh was talking about. In the rest of the world, governments have responded by taking unorthodox measures, pumping in money, lowering interest rates, and so on. In India, we've stuck to the textbook largely. The government believes there's not enough fiscal space because, and it's true that revenues have fallen and expenditures have risen. And on the monetary side, RBI is saying they're more worried about inflation than about demand. But inflation right now is 6%, not because there's an excess demand. The demand has totally collapsed. We're debating whether GDP will be -6 or -10. But it's because of supply disruptions. And in India, that's always the case. So RBI not wanting to cut rates further worries me. The government not wanting to expand the fiscal deficit further worries me, because right now, it is only those instruments which can immediately boost the economy. Right now, you will not find investment forthcoming. You will not find exports growing. It's just not possible under the current circumstances and current sentiments. So the government, which is the only institution which has the power to print money, none of us do, neither companies nor individuals. I think the time has come for drastic measures so that we don't go down to -10, -12. I'm not saying there's anything the government can do to make it +5 or +6, but there's a difference between being at 0, -1, -2, and being at -6, -10. That also matters. The degree of contraction also matters. And I think the government needs to do a little more. Step out of the textbook. This is not a textbook situation. This is the thing the textbooks say should never happen. Or this is when all assumptions fail. So all assumptions have failed, and the government needs to come out of the box. RBI needs to come out of the box and do something drastic to prevent a serious contraction.
What can the government do, Venu? You've also been tweeting a lot about the worrying signs that are there. With the states running out of funds, the government says we'll start maybe borrowing more from the RBI. Any other solutions?
Now, let me say, let me put out a macro number which has come from Rathin Roy, who's director of, until 2 months ago, he was director of National Institute of Public Finance and Policy, which is a finance ministry think tank. And Rathin Roy has also been in the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council a year and a half, 2 years ago. He says that the contraction in India could be the order of 70% GDP contraction. Now, 70%, Priya, is, and there are other economists in Bombay, in fund houses who've been talking about double-digit contraction rate, which Didar Singh also mentioned. Now, the point is, given the situation, private investments, like there's a shock, there's a demand shock and there's a supply shock. So the private investment won't be forthcoming because all the corporate business world is in the process of consolidating, right? You'll see a lot of mergers and acquisitions. Ambani buying up Vianney in the news today. There's massive consolidation going on in the world of business. No new investments are happening. And now, Priya, it has also come out very clearly that the huge corporate tax break, this is a news which came day before, huge corporate tax break, which corporate India got last year, 1,45,000 crore, has been used by companies, Priya, to merely preserve cash, to retire their debt, consolidate the balance sheet. So no new investments. So now come to, so the only investing entity, even last year, 2019-20, was the government. So it is established even by RBI that whatever GDP rate we got in 2019-20, when you said 3.1 or 3.5%, largely came from government spending. Now, so is the government spending today? I would say government is still being very stingy with its spending, because consumption is down. Private investment was never there. It has hardly picked up in the last 4 years. Consumption is down because of COVID. People are just, consuming bare essentials, not fully come out. Now, the third leg, government spending, is the only one which can really generate demand quickly. But that is not happening because, I'll give you a shocking piece of data here. The fiscal stimulus, as in direct cash in the hands of the people, Priya, was as much in 2019-20, was the same as in 2020 this year. And you see the difference between last year and this year. This year we had a pandemic. If you remember, the PM Kisan, whatever, 1 lakh plus crore was given last year. That is what is being continued, being front-loaded this year. And the corporate, money in the hands of corporates was given last year. So if you total up the fiscal stimulus in 2019, it is probably more than the fiscal stimulus in 2021. So this is to me, this is inexplicable. You know, how is it that the center, gave more fiscal stimulus in 2019 as compared to when I say fiscal stimulus, direct money in the hand. And Priya, finally, I would say, the state chief ministers yesterday made a remark before the GST meeting. I think this is the most worrisome sign. They are saying that in order to pay salaries and health costs, because states are running all the health expenditure, they are drastically cutting down on capital expenditure, which is again, which is government spending, which leads to GDP growth. So this massive contraction by state governments, which is reflected on the other side. I saw, as I tweeted, a big capital goods company, Thermax, the owner of the CEO of Thermax made a statement that in this year he has not received any orders from the government. You ask L&T and others, they will probably tell you the same thing, because a lot of them receive orders from government programs are outsourced. I mean, the orders are given to the private sector. They are not getting orders. So to me, this is very worrisome. There is no new spending by the government reflecting in the orders to the private sector. So
all the spending, people are just using it to shore up their loans and not putting money back in the market.
And at this rate, Priya, I have written this also. India will be probably we will be the slowest. We'll see the slowest recovery among emerging market economies. Like China has already recovered. China is showing positive growth in April, May, June. July, August, September also they'll show positive growth. So this is the difference, All
right. Pranjal, your thoughts on this, how are we going to start the demand growing again, get the economy going again?
I think I would break it into three parts. There's the policy part, which others have referred to. I think there's the governance part, and then there is the administrative part. Now, I'll refer to the other two. In the governance part, even the money which has been spent or at least been promised on various projects, I don't think enough of it is actually trickling on ground in terms of projects being implemented, financial closures of projects. So whether you look at roads, ports and others, I mean, there's a lot of investment that needs to be done, and that's earmarked. Budgets have been allocated, but the bidding process, the tender process, land acquisition process, it's still stuck in the same old issues which were there earlier, where both state governments and the central government have to coordinate. And therefore, because of some of these dissonance in the coordination, the central government is saying that we will use central land in states to hasten the projects and make sure that there is no interference from local administration. So I think there is a huge problem there. Our governance system continues to behave as if it's normal times, and they are still not taking, accelerated processes or steps to make sure that whatever is being promised is being delivered on ground. And you see these orders being executed as when you refer to that, maybe the orders are in the pipeline, but that order in the pipeline doesn't help anybody, right? That financial closure is required. Finally, it's the administrative issues. Look at the way that even the basic fundamental urges of consumption which are there, which can be delivered by our value chain and logistics companies, are being curbed in various ways. Almost every district head is now on his own trip in terms of deciding to lock down or not lock down. So how can a company, even if it wants to deliver across states, how does a company behave? So the amount of uncertainty that companies are facing is tremendous. So at a national level, the government may say unlockdown 4 is here. But if you look at it at the granular level, there is a patchwork of situations. One district may be completely open. The neighboring district with 2 cops sitting over there don't prevent you from going inside and doing anything. So, this confusion at a block level, district level is also creating a huge issue, which is why I think a lot of the responsibility also lies with state governments. The central government has its own problems, but the state governments are basically pushing the ball back into somebody else's court, saying that, it's not a problem, I can handle, let the center manage. But at the same time, they also said, well, center cannot manage the states, we cannot be a country which is run by the center. So I think those issues are there. One point on the private sector, I think there is also a lot of timidity in the private sector. And I can tell you with my conversations with various CXOs that Indian private sector is a risk-averse private sector. They do not believe in taking risks. They have grown up in a situation where the ecosystem was largely managed, risks were mitigated to the largest extent possible. So while there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, the risk-taking ability is very, very low. So they want to hold on to cash. Even if you give them further subsidies, they'll still hold on to cash. The cash reserves will keep growing, but they do not want to go and put their money where their mouth is. So at the end, you cannot say, well, it's only the finance minister who has to solve all my problems, from the district administration to the, making sure that GST money comes to me. I think the responsibility has to be taken across all levels.
Dr. Singh, and also where can the money come in? Of course, if RBI can print money, or that's the other option. Is what about FDI? But all the FDI coming in is usually in the tech sectors, mostly in the tech sectors that has happened in India right now. Is FDI then our best bet?
See, FDI is coming. It will continue to come because the Indian market continues to be something which is worth looking at. And Pranjal's book, for example, talks about all these new technologies and a lot of Indian companies using it. So these are the fresh areas. It will come there. But the problems on the ground are the same that you heard Pranjal just mentioned, whether it's FDI or whether it's domestic investment or whether it's government investment, the same issues keep revolving again and again and again. And I think on that score, the real issue that we need to, rethink ourselves as human beings. It's a very tough one, but we need empathy. Can we get bureaucracy to be empathetic to every situation, to every human being? It's an almost impossible task to ask for. I think that's the only hope. That's the only hope we have. The world must learn it, and we in India must learn it even more. I agree with Venu that we'll probably be the worst performing emerging market economy. Now, that's really serious stuff. And that's serious stuff in a situation where China came down. We were expecting a lot of investment to come to India. Little bit has come, but not much, because the same issues on the ground remain. They don't go away. Despite pandemic, the issues on the ground do not go away, and that remains a problem.
What is your response to that?
Priya, the thing is that foreign investment is coming in, but again, it's largely coming into brownfield areas. I mean, they're coming into already existing companies. For example, you see Reliance has got a lot of investment in its ventures. So I don't think it's coming into the new ventures, greenfield ventures in that way. And that's partly, again, because this is a global crisis, right? So it's not that it's only India which is affected. Everyone is affected, and corporates around the world are responding, to that crisis. And maybe that risk-taking appetite will not be there in such circumstances. But I think in India, I think everyone is right. The fundamental hurdles to investment are pre-COVID, and they continue. COVID has just added 4 or 5 other layers, including the uncertainty and so on that Pranjal mentioned, right? So now the challenge for the government is to mitigate the COVID hurdles and address the pre-COVID hurdles, right? Because ultimately investors are looking at all of that put together. And I think still the government, and Dr. Didar Singh has been frank at talking about his former colleagues in the bureaucracy. I think there needs to be a mindset change, not only in bureaucracy, but at all, and this is not only the IAS, but at every level of government, that, investment comes first. That's my firm view. Once the policy apparatus, the administrative apparatus is ready to accept that that you have to do whatever it takes to get investment, whether it's foreign, domestic, or government, and get it efficiently and let them execute their projects, things are not going to change, right? So I think the government has announced various big ticket reforms in agriculture, in mining, in coal, a lot of areas. But again, ultimately, these may get held up on the ground because of things related to land or things related to clearances. Those things are still very, very much a reality. It takes 900 days to get a clearance, environment and forest clearance. Why should it not take 100? The point is not whether clearance should be given or not given. You can say no to a project, but it has to be given in reasonable time, right? For an investor. So you say no in 90 days or say yes in 90 days or 100 days, not in 900 days, right? So I think those kind of issues still remain, and I don't see them being addressed, and they need a combination of center and state and the bureaucracy at all levels to respond. And I don't see that yet. But if that urgency doesn't come, I'm afraid some of the pessimistic scenarios that are being mentioned may turn out to be the reality. On the other hand, if the government and state governments are determined to do something about it and put investment first, put business first, put jobs first, then we may see a change in mentality and a better recovery. So I think this is all about the choices we make, right? Whether we end up at -10, -5, 0, or +2, it's about the choices we make. China has made certain choices. You can distrust their data, but they're clearly doing better than other countries. Other countries have also made choices. So policy choices are very, very critical, and at no juncture more critical than the one we find ourselves in now, because this is a once in a 100-year moment. So the governments need to come out with their best and firing on all cylinders, which so far as I said, some of the response has been textbook, some of it is still stuck in the past. I think if not now, it's famously said India responds in a crisis, right? We responded to 91 crisis with reform.
Right. Huh.
We responded to the 60s food crisis with Green Revolution. So if not now, then when? So I think this is the time, and I hope that push comes in the months to come.
Have you seen any signs of the push coming? Yeah, speak. Sorry.
Priya, I just want to add to what Dheeraj says. Priya, the first thing in my view is to be honest with yourself. In such a crisis of this order, as once in 100 years, let us be honest with ourselves. I'm talking about in terms of policy making. Everybody knows that the bulk of the 3 lakh crore, whatever that Atmanirbhar, the Atmanirbhar package, the 20 lakh crore. If you take out the RBI, the liquidity injection part, the bulk of the Atmanirbhar package, Priya, media has reported it. They were all like a rehash of the programs which are already going on. I think we should give ourselves a break and just be a little more honest. I'm speaking on behalf of
acknowledge the problem. Yeah.
You just come up with some really sort of credible, policy measures which look like. Which at least seem like you're addressing the situation with a greater sense of urgency. Now, if you just sort of keep regurgitating older this thing as old wine in new bottle, make in India has become Atmanirbharta. So it doesn't work. You have to. Beyond a point, you can delude people to get votes, but after a stage you start deluding yourself. Then that doesn't work.
No, Atmanirbhar Bharat, in fact, Priya, is a very, very good goal, but there's an entire process, an entire set of reforms which is needed. Now, Prime Minister has said that he wants self-sufficiency. Let's see the rest of the government machinery respond to that in 2 months or 3 months, right? If there's no response, then it remains a slogan. Like Make in India, it was launched 6 years ago, but we've seen that share of manufacturing in GDP has not grown. In fact, it's probably come down a little. So, ultimately the numbers tell you the truth. And Venu's right. If you shock yourself, and if you accept that it is -10 or maybe the GDP numbers which come out will shock the system into action. But I think you need that shock to respond, which is what I said has happened earlier. When the system is shocked, only then does it respond in India.
A lot of the problem is also the government's policies, Pranjal. You began talking about the policies. Even the Supreme Court has pulled up the government for this huge lockdown. They've said, now and you're not favoring the middle class. So there's been a whole course correction really needs to be done. You just come up with fancy slogans is not the answer.
I think most of the steps which the government has taken have a long-term perspective. A clear, cogent policy which is very short-term and immediate, which is medium-term and long-term, should be more visible. I don't think that plan is visible to a lot of people. Therefore, the good thing, what I'm optimistic about is that some of the fundamental structural changes taking place across various sectors, whether it's in farm sector or defense production or even in technology area in a post-Galwan anti-China steps, I think will really benefit us in the long term. But, the point is that 5 years later, we'll be very happy that these steps were taken because things should be much better. But in the next 18 months or 12 months, I think things are still going to look pretty poor. But, again, I want to go back to the point. We very well articulated the problems at the central government level. But again, in a federal structure, the state governments also have a responsibility. How many such packages have you seen across state governments? What is the activity that they are doing? Our crisis, even pre-COVID, as Dheeraj and Venu mentioned, was in any case there. The fiscal deficit of states even before COVID was at a high level. There was a lot of profligacy there. they are still not reforming themselves. Even if you look at a city like Delhi or a city state like Delhi, you find that this urge to give freebies is still there. Where are the revenue generating activities which states are creating? Is it so that a state does not have any money? Sure, there are problems in the GST funds allocation, but have the states taken steps, if they want to be so independent, set a benchmark, set new rules, set new policies, blaze a trail, tell the rest of the country that, this is how things can be done. But I don't see too many states doing that. I mean, no specific policy comes to mind. I think the only thing that state governments have become better at are webinars. So what's happened is from managing these investment summits, they've moved into investment promotion webinars, and of course now they all talk about technology, but they can barely manage a webinar and get everybody to be quiet on that. So I really don't see that improvement in it's very easy to blame somebody else. The center is blaming the states are blaming the center, but in the end, actual change on the ground is not taking place, and no force on earth can make that difference if you don't really make sure that things change at a very, very local level. Every city, every town is an engine of growth. If you make sure that the engines of growth in your state are functioning well, the clusters which are the industrial clusters or IT clusters, if they are able to perform at the best that they can, automatically things come together at a regional and a state and a national level. I don't see that effort taking place. Everybody has a grand vision and a grand talk, but these fundamental issues are not being addressed. And I want to refer to what Dr. Singh said. This is a time when we have to be empathetic. So bureaucratic approach to a lot of issues has to be changed. You have to see how can I make sure that a white collar worker or a blue collar worker or a farm worker, what is needed for that person to be able to get his livelihood together. If you keep those fundamental focus issues in mind, I think things can improve.
Yeah. I just want to add,
totally out of time.
I just add one thing here. I broadly take Pranjal's point about states. States have to perform ultimately, but I would like to nuance that. The southern states are performing pretty well, even pre-COVID. Where Tamil Nadu, Kerala, health, they've done very well on health. Ayushman Bharat was already being implemented there before Modi announced it here. Very well. Andhra also, they've created ecosystems for IT like Andhra, Telangana, and Kerala, Tamil Nadu. It's the problem. Really, in terms of governance, are the 7-8 northern states from where Mr. Modi gets 55% vote share average.
Dheeraj, would you agree, since you're also from the south? the south and north performance
I can give you data. I can give you data on the south. South has mirrors.
Don't give data right now. I'm out of time. I will come for data. I'll direct them to your website.
I think we can. The north and south debate always goes on, but let's also be honest, what Pranjal said is right. The classic case is electricity distribution, where Tamil Nadu, which is otherwise well governed, is an equal culprit as many other states where money has just gone down the drain because of freebies, very rightly pointed out. So I think now is the time when state, of course, needs to borrow more and needs to get more money from the center, but they must also find ways in which to cut their own leakages and to raise revenue. So I agree with Pranjal on that point. And I think no state, north or south, is totally immune from profligacy and wasting a certain amount of money.
No, governance. I said governance. Human development indices, southern states are at least 15 years ahead of
all right. Let me give Dr. Singh the last word. Maybe a word for the
we call ourselves the human race. It's time to stop thinking about the race and being more human. That's my last point. Thank you.
And that empathy, we didn't even see it on the show.
That's empathy. If you can be human, you are empathetic.
Okay, on that note, thank you all of you for taking part. And I do hope we get enough empathetic viewers for this show, because it is a concern, I think, that concerns all of us, an issue that concerns all of us. Thank you so much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.